Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This video explores the complex historical, cultural, and social dimensions of divorce within the American Muslim community. This content is provided strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, religious, or marriage counseling advice. Divorce laws in the United States vary significantly by state, and Islamic jurisprudence regarding marriage contracts and dissolution is a highly specialized field involving individual circumstances and specific school of thought interpretations. Viewers are strongly encouraged to consult with qualified legal professionals, community leaders, or certified Islamic scholars regarding their own personal circumstances. Please conduct your own due diligence before drawing conclusions or making life-altering decisions based on this information. In the mid-20th century, the American landscape for Muslims was vastly different from what we see today. If you look at the demographic data of the 1950s and 60s, the conversation surrounding marital dissolution in these communities was almost non-existent. Fast forward to the present day, and we are witnessing a shifting reality where the rate of divorce among American Muslims is increasingly mirroring the national average. Why is this happening? Is it a crisis of faith, a clash of cultures, or perhaps a misunderstood evolution of how American Muslims navigate their private lives in the public sphere? There is a persistent myth that suggests divorce is something that happens in a vacuum, entirely separated from the cultural pressures of the Western world. That is a dangerous simplification. Today, we are opening the first chapter of a 10-part series that will dismantle the silence surrounding this topic. You might believe you understand the dynamics of family life in this community, but what if I told you that the tension between traditional expectations and American realities is creating a pressure cooker that has remained largely ignored by mainstream sociological discourse? This deep dive is designed to solve a specific problem for the modern American audience. Whether you are a member of the Muslim community navigating these transitions yourself, a sociologist trying to understand the changing fabric of American religion, or simply someone curious about how different groups integrate their values into the American legal system, this series provides the context you have been missing. We are going to look at the intersection of civil law and religious practice, the role of community stigmas, and the historical evolution of family structures. By the end of this series, you will no longer have to rely on hearsay or fragmented anecdotes. You will have a clear, comprehensive, and evidence-based map of how divorce, a practice that is technically permissible but culturally fraught, has transformed into a critical issue for Muslims living in the United States. To understand where we are, we must look at the historical trajectory of the American Muslim experience. When we talk about the history of divorce in this community, we are really talking about the history of identity formation. For the first wave of Muslim immigrants, the preservation of the family unit was often seen as the ultimate measure of success and religious adherence. In these early decades, divorce was not just a legal or personal failing. It was viewed as a communal failure, a crack in the foundation of an immigrant community trying to establish its footprint in a new land. The data from early surveys and community studies suggest that internal community pressure functioned as a powerful, sometimes overwhelming, deterrent against separating, even in cases of significant unhappiness or incompatibility. This pressure was not merely social. It was embedded in the way institutions were structured. Local mosques, which were the primary hubs for social life, were not equipped to handle the complexities of matrimonial dispute resolution. They were gathering places, centers for worship, and hubs for charitable efforts. When a couple reached an impasse, there was often nowhere to turn that didn't involve the entire community knowing their business. This fear of being the subject of gossip or being labeled as the person who disrupted the communal harmony silenced countless individuals for generations. We must ask ourselves, what happens to a community when the mechanism for ending a failed marriage is effectively stifled by the fear of social exile? Furthermore, the legal landscape in the United States poses a unique set of challenges that are rarely discussed with this level of scrutiny. In a secular legal system, a marriage is a civil contract. In the Islamic tradition, it is both a sacred covenant and a civil contract. When these two frameworks collide in an American courtroom, the result is often a legal limbo that can leave families, particularly women and children, in precarious positions. Consider the case of the mahr, or the dower, which is a gift given by the groom to the bride at the time of marriage. In many American jurisdictions, judges may not recognize the religious stipulations of a marriage contract, treating it instead as a standard prenuptial agreement or, in some cases, ignoring it entirely. This creates a scenario where the religious expectations of one spouse clash with the civil reality imposed by the state. We have to move beyond the surface level to understand the nuances of this friction. If we only focus on the divorce rate, we miss the human stories that define this era. We are talking about individuals who are navigating their roles as American citizens, balancing their obligations under civil law with their understanding of religious duty, and dealing with the psychological toll of being caught between two worlds. The historical trend is clear. As Muslims have become more integrated into the American social fabric, the stigma attached to divorce has slowly, albeit unevenly, begun to fade, and the frequency of marital dissolution has risen accordingly. This is not a moral decay. It is a manifestation of the same pressures that have shaped the American family at large over the last 70 years. By examining the historical trends, we can start to see that the rise in divorce is not just about the individuals involved, but about the institution of marriage itself. As we move through this 10-part masterclass, we will peel back these layers. We will look at how the shift from a close-knit, immigrant-led community to a more diverse, American-born and multi-generational population has redefined the parameters of what is acceptable and what is possible. We will examine the role of education, the impact of economic independence, and the changing expectations of companionship that have redefined the marital ideal for younger generations of American Muslims. The landscape is shifting, and the silence that once kept these issues hidden is being broken, piece by piece. Understanding this history is not just about the past. It is the only way to navigate the challenges that families will face in the years ahead. We are embarking on a journey that will challenge your assumptions, broaden your perspective, and ultimately, provide a level of clarity that few other resources can offer. To grasp the magnitude of these changes, we must look at the structural foundation of the Muslim family, as it existed in the United States throughout the latter half of the 20th century. Imagine a typical household in a suburban center during the late 1970s. The structure was largely defined by a cohesive, tightly knit community network, often centered around the first generation of immigrants who had come to America seeking professional opportunities or academic advancement. In this era, the social contract was explicit. Marriage was not just an agreement between two people. It was a bridge connecting two families, often spanning continents. If a conflict arose, the mechanism for resolution was rarely the family court system. Instead, it was an informal arbitration led by elders or the local imam. This created a specific cultural ecosystem where the prospect of divorce was viewed as a radical departure from communal norms. Let us consider a case study of a hypothetical couple, Sarah and Ahmed, who arrived in the United States in 1982. For them, the pressure to maintain the marriage was immense. They faced a double bind. Internally, they felt the weight of their cultural heritage, which emphasized stability and the endurance of the marital bond as a pillar of community honor. Externally, they were living in an American society that was rapidly changing its own view on divorce, with no-fault divorce laws becoming the standard across the country. Sarah and Ahmed lived in a state of suspended animation. If their marriage hit a breaking point, the threat of social isolation within their own mosque community served as a silent guardian of that marriage. To seek a divorce was to invite intense scrutiny and potential judgment from their peer group. This social cost was, for many, far higher than the personal cost of remaining in an unhappy union. This dynamic was reinforced by the economic reality of the time. In many immigrant households, the division of labor was strictly traditional. The husband held the primary economic power, and the wife was often the custodian of the domestic and cultural life of the home. This imbalance created a systemic dependency. If a woman in that era were to initiate a separation, she would face not only the emotional burden of the divorce itself, but also a complete lack of resources or support. There were no established networks for Muslim women to transition into financial independence following a separation. The legal system, meanwhile, was entirely secular and often blind to the religious nuances of the nikah, or the Islamic marriage contract. This created a profound sense of insecurity. As we transition into the 1990s and the early 2000s, this monolithic structure began to crack under the weight of demographic shifts. The children of those first-generation immigrants were coming of age. They were Americans by birth or by long-term residency. Their expectations of marriage were fundamentally different from those of their parents. They were not looking for a marriage that was solely a functional union of families. They were seeking companionship, individual fulfillment, and mutual intellectual growth. This generation brought a new volatile ingredient into the cultural mix. They were fluent in the language of American psychology and individual rights, yet they were still expected to adhere to the traditional protocols of their faith and community. This generated a friction that we can observe through the rising number of informal and eventually formal marital disputes that began to surface in the early 2000s. We saw a shift from the community-level arbitration of the past toward a more complex, often litigious process. The central issue was no longer just the act of divorce. It was the lack of a standardized, culturally competent framework to facilitate it. Many couples found themselves in a state of civil divorce, having obtained a decree from an American court, while remaining religiously wed in the eyes of their community. This status of being neither fully married nor fully divorced caused immense pain and logistical nightmares, particularly regarding child custody, the division of assets, and the ability to remarry within the faith. Consider the complexity of the mahr, or the dower, during this transition. Imagine a situation in 2005 where a couple enters a civil court. The husband argues that the assets should be divided according to state law, which operates on equitable distribution. The wife, however, refers to the marriage contract signed in the presence of an imam, which promised a specific sum of money upon divorce. Because the American legal system does not automatically recognize the religious contract as a civil document, the wife was often left at a severe disadvantage. This was not a rare occurrence. It became a systemic hurdle. The lack of legal integration meant that religious rights were often unenforceable in the very courts that held the power to end the marriage. By the time we reached the 2010s, the conversation shifted from a focus on the stigma of divorce to the necessity of systemic support. The silence was finally being broken. Community organizations began to emerge that focused specifically on matrimonial counseling and advocacy for women facing divorce. We saw a move toward integrating religious and legal advice, with scholars beginning to work alongside attorneys to bridge the gap between Sharia principles and U.S. civil law. This shift was a direct response to the suffering of families who had been trapped in the limbo of the previous decades. It was an acknowledgement that the traditional ways of handling domestic crises were no longer sufficient for the realities of modern American life. Yet, even with these advancements, the year 2026 presents a new set of challenges. We are currently observing a trend where the younger generation, often referred to as the digital natives of the American Muslim experience, is approaching marriage with a level of scrutiny that would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. They are utilizing technology to facilitate the search for partners, but they are also utilizing that same technology to research their rights and protections before they ever sign a marriage contract. The historical trend clearly indicates that as the community becomes more integrated and educated, the expectations for marital satisfaction rise, and the tolerance for dysfunctional unions diminishes. However, we must ask, have we truly solved the underlying tension? While we have better resources and a more open conversation, the intersection of two distinct legal and cultural worlds remains a minefield. We have moved from a society of silence to a society of discourse, but the logistical and emotional complexity of the process has not decreased. It has simply evolved. We are now dealing with issues like post-divorce mediation, the complexities of co-parenting across different cultural expectations, and the ongoing struggle to harmonize religious obligations with state-sanctioned mandates. As we look toward the future, we have to consider what the next decade holds. If the historical trajectory continues, we can expect to see an even greater reliance on specialized legal and religious consulting services. We will likely see a move toward more formal prenuptial agreements that explicitly bridge the gap between religious requirements and civil law. The goal is to provide clarity and protection, reducing the volatility of the divorce process. But to understand the full extent of this evolution, we need to look closer at the specific mechanisms of modern mediation and the way that current law handles these delicate matters. In the next part, we will analyze the precise legal frameworks that are currently being tested in courtrooms across the country, and we will explore why the failure to integrate these systems is still the leading cause of prolonged emotional and financial trauma for families going through this transition. The path forward is being paved right now, but it is a narrow road that requires a deep understanding of both history and the law. To navigate the current legal landscape of 2026, we have to address the fundamental disconnect between the Islamic marriage contract and the United States civil court system. This is where many families find themselves stuck in a state of legal, religious, and emotional paralysis. Imagine a scenario involving a couple, John and Amina, living in a major metropolitan area like Chicago. They have been married for 15 years, have 2 children, and possess significant communal assets. When their marriage breaks down, they initiate a civil divorce in a state court. The court follows the standard process of equitable distribution, dividing their property based on the laws of Illinois. However, The internal Islamic marriage contract they signed years ago contains a provision for the mahr that was meant to act as a financial safety net for the wife. The civil judge, viewing this through the lens of standard contract law, may not grant the enforceability of that religious provision, or may view it as entirely separate from the property division. This creates a scenario where the wife receives half of the marital assets under state law, but loses the specific, pre-agreed religious protections that were meant to be her separate property. This is not a theoretical problem. It is a recurring issue that illustrates the core friction of the American Muslim experience. To understand why this happens, we must look at the legal doctrine of ecclesiastical abstention. In many cases, United States courts are hesitant to interpret or enforce religious obligations because of the First Amendment, which prevents the government from entanglement in religious affairs. While this is intended to protect religious freedom, it often creates a situation where religious rights simply vanish the moment a case hits the secular courtroom. When the court refuses to touch the Islamic contract, the parties involved are left to negotiate the terms of their religious divorce, the talaq or khula, entirely outside the oversight of the state. This can lead to lopsided outcomes where the party with more leverage, often the one who holds the power to initiate the religious divorce, dictates the terms, leaving the other party with little recourse. Consider a case study from 2024 involving a woman who had obtained a civil divorce, but could not secure a religious divorce for nearly 3 years. Because her husband refused to provide the Islamic divorce, she remained technically wed in the eyes of her religious community. She was unable to remarry within her faith and faced immense social stigma whenever she expressed interest in a new partner. This is a clear example of how the dual-track system creates a trap. The civil law provides the freedom to walk away from a marriage, but the lack of an integrated mechanism for religious dissolution acts as an anchor, holding individuals in a state of suspended identity. We are seeing a slow, incremental shift toward what some legal scholars call the integration of religious arbitration agreements into civil contracts. This is a complex legal area, but the goal is to have the civil court recognize the arbitration process as a binding, enforceable part of the overall marital dissolution. The process of modern mediation is evolving to address these gaps. We are seeing the rise of community-based centers that specialize in what could be described as collaborative divorce for Muslims. These centers act as a bridge. They bring together family law attorneys who understand the specific needs of this community and religious scholars who are trained in contemporary family dynamics. The aim is to ensure that the civil divorce process accounts for the religious requirements from the beginning. Instead of having a civil divorce followed by a separate, potentially contentious religious process, these centers facilitate a synchronized approach. They encourage couples to draft comprehensive separation agreements that are then reviewed by both secular and religious experts, ensuring that the final result is recognized by the state and adheres to the individual's conscience. This does not mean that every divorce becomes a seamless process. Far from it. The emotional toll of navigating two different sets of expectations is massive. We are talking about individuals who are forced to translate their personal heartbreak into the language of the courtroom and the language of the mosque simultaneously. There is a specific psychological burden that comes with this. It is not just the end of a relationship. It is the renegotiation of one's entire place within their community. When we analyze the data from recent sociological studies, it is clear that the most resilient individuals are those who have access to transparent, informed, and culturally sensitive resources from the start. We must also consider the role of the younger generation, who are currently shaping the future of this discourse. In 2026, we are seeing a shift toward a more proactive, educated approach to marriage. Many couples are now insisting on detailed marriage contracts that explicitly outline the expectations for dispute resolution before they even walk down the aisle. This is a significant departure from the practices of their parents, who often relied on informal understandings that were never written down. By formalizing these agreements, they are building a safety net that is designed to survive the reality of modern life. They are essentially treating the contract as a living document that anticipates the possibility of future conflict, which is a massive shift from the culture of silence that characterized the earlier decades. But what about the role of the community itself? How are mosques and organizations adapting to this new reality? The trend is moving toward institutionalizing the process. Instead of leaving the burden on local imams who may or may not be trained in family law, communities are creating dedicated panels that utilize consistent, transparent procedures. This transparency is the key to reducing the social stigma that has historically acted as a barrier to divorce. When the process is predictable, when the outcome is seen as fair by all parties, and when the community provides resources for emotional and financial support, the stigma is significantly reduced. This is a transformation that is still in its infancy, but the direction is clear. We are watching a real-time evolution of how a community adapts its ancient principles to the secular realities of a superpower nation. It is a messy, complicated, and often painful process, but it is one that is necessary for the long-term well-being of the population. We are witnessing the maturation of an American religious identity that is no longer hiding its problems, but is actively looking for ways to solve them. By understanding the intersection of the legal, the religious, and the personal, we gain a deeper insight into the broader challenges of religious integration in the 21st century. But as we move forward, we have to look even deeper into the specific psychological patterns that characterize these separations, and how the trauma of transition impacts the children involved, as that is the next critical frontier in this narrative. The legal side is just the beginning of the story, as the emotional and familial ramifications ripple out far beyond the courtroom walls. In the next part, we will explore the untold side of this evolution, how the children of these divorces are navigating their dual identity, and the lasting impact this has on the next generation of American Muslims. The experience of children born into families that navigate the complexity of religious divorce in the United States is perhaps the most under-researched yet deeply impactful aspect of this historical evolution. Imagine a child, let us call him Marcus, who is 10 years old in 2026. Marcus lives in a household where the parents have successfully navigated the civil court system, but are still entangled in a web of religious mediation. He is caught in a dual identity landscape. At school, he is an American child dealing with the standard social dynamics of his peer group. At home, or within his religious community, he is expected to uphold a specific set of cultural and spiritual traditions that often seem at odds with the reality of his parents' separation. This creates a cognitive dissonance that can have lasting psychological consequences if it is not managed with extreme care and intentionality by both parents. When a marriage dissolves in this context, the impact on the child is not merely about the absence of one parent or the change in living arrangements. It is about the fragmentation of the cultural and religious narrative that defined their early life. Consider a case study involving a family in Texas. Following a divorce, the father maintained the primary connection to the local mosque, while the mother, having moved out, sought to integrate the children into a more secular, community-focused social life. The children were essentially being pulled between two different versions of what it means to be a Muslim in America. The father advocated for a traditional approach, fearing the loss of heritage, while the mother argued for an approach that prioritized the children's integration into their immediate American environment. This tension is exacerbated by the lack of specialized support systems. In many instances, the community support that exists, the counseling, the mediation, the educational resources, is designed to help the adults. There is almost no infrastructure dedicated to the psychological health of the children of these divorces. We are seeing, however, the emergence of a new generation of youth mentors who are beginning to address this gap. These mentors, often young adults who themselves experienced their parents' divorce, are stepping in to provide the guidance that the formal institutions have failed to offer. They are creating informal spaces where children can discuss their experiences without the fear of judgment or the pressure to pick a side. This is a critical development because the long-term potential outcomes for these children depend heavily on their ability to integrate these two parts of their identity, rather than being forced to abandon one for the other. Data from recent sociological surveys suggest that children who are provided with a clear, consistent, and respectful narrative about why their parents separated fare significantly better in the long run. The trauma often stems not from the divorce itself, but from the ambiguity and the conflict that follows. When parents use their children as proxies in their own ongoing battle for religious or cultural validation, the damage is compounded. We have to look at the historical trends of family psychology to understand that this is not unique to the Muslim community, but it is amplified by the unique pressures of navigating a minority status in the United States. The challenge for parents in 2026 is to decouple their own personal struggle from the identity development of their children. Imagine if there were an established protocol for parental cooperation that explicitly addressed the cultural and religious needs of the child post-divorce. We are seeing early iterations of this in some progressive community centers. They are encouraging parents to create a joint parenting plan that includes a section on religious education and cultural engagement. This document is not legally binding in the traditional sense, but it acts as a roadmap for the family, setting clear expectations for how the children will engage with their faith and their community after the home has been divided. This is a vital step toward reducing the chaos that usually defines this transition period. It moves the focus from the rights of the parents to the developmental needs of the child. We also have to discuss the impact on the concept of family honor. Historically, the family was the vessel of honor, and the preservation of the family was the primary way that honor was maintained in a new, often hostile environment. When a divorce occurs, this concept of honor is often destabilized, and the children feel the weight of this loss. They feel they are responsible for the social standing of the family. This is an immense pressure for a young person to carry. It is only when the community at large shifts its understanding of what constitutes a successful family, moving away from the idea that a family must be a two-parent household to be valid, and toward a model that values the well-being and health of the individuals within it, that this burden will be lifted. The evolution of this community is currently reaching a tipping point. As we have moved through the first 4 parts of this masterclass, we have traced the arc from a culture of silence, through the period of fragmented, unintegrated processes, to the current era of cautious, intentional efforts at reform. Yet, there remains a massive, often overlooked barrier that is preventing true systemic change. It is not just about the law, and it is not just about counseling. It is about the fundamental, deeply ingrained expectations of gender and authority that continue to govern many of these dynamics. We have touched on the role of the MAR and the importance of mediation, but we have yet to peel back the curtain on the most sensitive, and perhaps most transformative subject of all. In the next part, we are going to dive into the internal power structures of the modern American Muslim home, and examine how the shifting definition of gender roles is forcing a complete rewriting of the script for the next generation. The struggle for equality, the battle for voice, and the quest for agency are the real drivers of this historical change, and they are happening in millions of homes right now. The implications for the future are profound, and they will challenge everything you think you know about the structure of the American family. To understand the true engine of this cultural shift, we must confront the uncomfortable reality of power dynamics within the home. For decades, the traditional hierarchy in many American Muslim households was modeled on a patriarchal structure that arrived with the first wave of immigrants. This model assumed a clear gendered division of labor, the husband as the public face and economic provider, the wife as the private custodian of family life and cultural continuity. In the year 2026, this model is not just being questioned, it is being dismantled. The driving force behind this disintegration is the rise of the educated, professional, and financially independent American Muslim woman. Imagine a woman named Layla, who is 32 years old and a high-level software architect in Silicon Valley. She represents a demographic that did not exist in the same way 30 years ago. Layla is not economically dependent on her spouse, nor is she willing to accept a marital structure that offers her no voice in the decision-making process. When Layla speaks about her expectations for marriage, she is not just talking about companionship, she is talking about partnership. This shift in expectations is the primary catalyst for the increasing divorce rate. It is not that individuals are less committed, it is that they are more committed to an ideal of equality that the traditional structures cannot accommodate. This leads to a fundamental conflict. In many traditional views of marriage, the authority to initiate a divorce, particularly in the form of the talaq, is legally vested in the husband. While the khula exists for women to initiate dissolution, it has historically been a complex, often lengthy process that required the consent or mediation of an authority figure. Layla and women like her are challenging this by demanding that the marriage contract itself contain clauses that grant them equivalent rights of dissolution, or by insisting that the marriage be built on a basis of mutual, rather than hierarchical, authority. This is a direct systemic challenge to the way the institution has functioned for centuries. Consider the case studies emerging from modern matrimonial clinics in 2026. We are seeing a pattern where women are increasingly bringing their own attorneys to the marriage ceremony to negotiate the contract. This is a radical departure from the practice of having an elder or a family representative handle the details. By taking control of the contract, they are setting the ground rules for the entire marriage. They are, in effect, creating a prenuptial agreement that is both legally sound under U.S. civil law and religiously compliant. They are ensuring that if the marriage fails, they have clear, defined protections that do not rely on the goodwill of their spouse or the mediation of a communal authority. This shift toward agency is causing a profound reaction within the broader community. There are those who argue that this represents an abandonment of tradition and a surrender to Western secular ideals. On the other side, There are those who argue that this is a return to the true spirit of justice within the faith, which emphasizes the rights of all individuals. This internal debate is the defining struggle of the contemporary American Muslim experience. It is not a fringe issue. It is the central question of how the community will define itself in the coming decades. Are we a community that clings to a rigid, patriarchal past, or are we one that embraces an evolving, egalitarian future? The historical trends are unmistakable. As women gain more access to higher education and professional success, the divorce rate among these demographics rises. This is a mirror of the broader American experience. But for the Muslim community, this is accompanied by a unique set of theological and cultural tensions. The question is not just whether a divorce is permissible. It is how the process of divorce can be made just, efficient, and compassionate. The traditional models of arbitration, which relied on the social power of the imam, are losing their efficacy in a world where individuals are increasingly connected to global ideas and professional networks, rather than just their local mosque. We are seeing the emergence of a new type of mediation. It is becoming increasingly secularized in its methodology, while remaining deeply respectful of religious principles. These new mediators are focusing on interest-based negotiation. Instead of focusing on who is at fault according to ancient rulings, they are focusing on how to construct a post-marital life that serves the best interests of the individuals and any children involved. This is a shift from a process of adjudication to a process of facilitation. It is a pragmatic response to a reality where the old tools of social and religious pressure no longer work to keep a couple together, and in fact, often serve to prolong the suffering of all parties involved. The impact of this shift is visible in the way that younger couples are approaching the entire concept of family life. They are no longer willing to accept silence. They are using their voices, their digital platforms, and their legal rights to demand a different kind of relationship. They are the ones who are creating the new norms. And as we look at the potential outcomes for the next 10 years, we can see a clear path toward a more transparent, legally integrated, and gender-equitable system of marriage and divorce. However, there is a lingering fear. What happens to the social fabric when the family unit is no longer defined by permanence, but by the quality of the partnership? This is a question that is keeping community leaders, scholars, and parents up at night. The transition is not complete, and the pain of this evolution is being felt in every corner of the country. We are still in the middle of this transformation, and there is one critical aspect that we have barely scratched the surface of. The way that digital technology and online spaces are either helping to resolve these conflicts or, in many cases, intensifying the polarization. In the next part, we will explore the rise of the digital marriage and the dark side of online divorce communities. The screen is the new forum, and it is reshaping our private lives in ways we are only just beginning to understand. The digital frontier is the next battleground for the American Muslim family, and the stakes could not be higher. The digital transformation of the American Muslim family experience is perhaps the most radical shift we have witnessed in the last 2 decades. In 2026, the traditional mosque-based community network has been, for many, superseded by the digital forum. Imagine a young couple in their 20s, living in different states, who meet through an algorithmic matchmaking app tailored for the Muslim community. The entire courtship process, the negotiation of expectations, and the eventual signing of the marriage contract are all mediated by digital platforms. This creates a virtual environment where the traditional oversight of family and community is effectively bypassed. When a marriage entered through these digital channels begins to fray, the dissolution process is also moving into the digital sphere. We are seeing the rise of online support communities, Facebook groups, and anonymous forum threads where individuals share their experiences with divorce. This provides an unprecedented level of access to information. An individual in a rural area who is facing a difficult marital situation can now, with a few clicks, connect with thousands of others who have gone through similar struggles. They can read accounts of how others handled the legal challenges, how they navigated the religious requirements, and how they managed the emotional fallout. This is a tremendous resource for empowerment. It dismantles the isolation that, as we discussed earlier, was the primary mechanism for maintaining the culture of silence. However, this same digital openness creates a massive, high-stakes problem: polarization and the spread of misinformation. Consider a case study of a woman named Sarah, who in 2025 was navigating a complex divorce. She turned to a large, unmoderated online group for guidance. Within hours, she received hundreds of pieces of advice, ranging from valid legal insights to deeply harmful, extremist interpretations of religious rights. Some posters encouraged her to take aggressive, legally risky actions that would have jeopardized her future financial stability, while others pushed her to remain in a damaging situation under the guise of religious duty. This is the dark side of the digital frontier. Because these platforms are often unmoderated and populated by individuals with varying levels of education and authority, the quality of guidance is incredibly inconsistent. The potential outcomes for those who rely solely on these spaces can be devastating. This polarization is mirrored in the way divorce is discussed online. The digital environment incentivizes high-conflict narratives. Posts that highlight victimization or call for retribution tend to generate more engagement than stories of nuanced, cooperative resolution. This creates a feedback loop where the most extreme voices become the loudest, framing the conversation around divorce as a war rather than a transition. It reinforces the very stigma it claims to be fighting. Instead of creating a culture of support, these digital spaces can often become chambers of resentment and blame, making the already traumatic process of separation even more volatile. Furthermore, we must address the issue of data and digital security. In 2026, the metadata surrounding a divorce, the private messages, the financial records, the digital history of the marriage, is being weaponized in civil courts. Imagine a situation where one spouse uses screenshots of private messages from a support group to prove abandonment or to undermine the other's claims in a custody battle. The digital footprint is now a permanent record that can be used to influence the outcome of a legal dissolution. This is a level of complexity that the generation before us never had to manage. The privacy that was once shielded by the informal nature of the community is now completely exposed by the permanence of digital data. We are seeing the emergence of digital-first mediation services that are attempting to curb this chaos. These services are trying to bring structure to the online conversation by providing access to verified experts. They are building platforms that prioritize confidentiality and provide a secure, mediated environment for negotiation. The goal is to replicate the benefits of the community-based arbitration models of the past, but with the efficiency and accessibility of modern technology. This is a promising direction, but it is still struggling to compete with the sheer volume of unfiltered, often inflammatory content on social media. The question of digital authority is central here. Who defines what is accurate when it comes to religious interpretation in the context of divorce? In the past, this authority was tied to specific, identifiable individuals within a local community. Today, anyone with a following can claim the mantle of expertise. We are seeing a struggle between the traditional, localized authority of the scholarly class and the new, influencer-based authority of the digital age. This struggle is affecting the very core of how families handle the crisis of divorce. It is causing a fragmentation of the community's response, making it increasingly difficult to establish a unified, consistent standard for how these matters should be handled. As we move toward the next phase of this masterclass, we have to recognize that the digital transition is not something we can reverse. It is the new reality. The challenge for the future is not to limit the access to these digital spaces, but to increase the digital literacy of the community. We need to empower individuals to distinguish between reliable, professional advice and the high-conflict, unverified noise that permeates the internet. We need to create digital spaces that are safe, moderated, and focused on constructive outcomes. This is the critical work that will determine how the next generation handles the dissolution of their marriages. Yet, even as we improve our digital literacy and our mediation tools, there is a fundamental human element that remains unchanged. The psychological trauma of divorce, the grief of losing a partnership, and the confusion of navigating a new identity are experiences that no algorithm or digital platform can truly resolve. We have looked at the history, the law, the child development, and the digital frontier. Now we must turn our attention to the most personal aspect of this transition, the long-term process of healing and the reintegration into the community after the dust of the divorce has finally settled. In the next part, we will explore the untold story of the post-divorce life, how individuals are rebuilding their sense of self, the challenges of finding new companionship, and the lingering social stigma that persists even in a modern, hyper-connected world. The journey does not end when the paperwork is signed. It is in many ways just beginning. The journey of reintegration post-divorce is a phase that is rarely discussed in public discourse, yet it constitutes the most significant period of growth and psychological reconstruction for the individuals involved. When the civil court decree is finalized and the religious separation is formalized, the individual is thrust into a reality that is fundamentally different from the one they occupied during their marriage. Imagine a person like David, a 40-year-old professional living in New York in 2026. For 15 years, his entire social circle, his weekend routines, and his sense of belonging were tied to the identity of being a husband and a co-parent within a specific community. After the divorce, that architecture is dismantled. He is not just losing a partner. He is losing the primary social structure that validated his place in the world. This leads to what we might call the phenomenon of social exile. Even in modern, urbanized communities, the shadow of a broken marriage can persist. For many, the mosque, which was once a place of comfort, becomes a site of anxiety. There is a palpable sense of being under observation, a feeling that one is still being evaluated by the standards of the community that witnessed the union. This is not necessarily due to overt hostility. It is often the weight of unspoken expectations and the awkwardness of renegotiating relationships with friends who were mutual friends of the former couple. Reintegration requires a conscious effort to rebuild a network that is independent of one's previous marital identity. Consider the case studies of individuals who successfully navigate this transition. A common theme among those who thrive is the development of a multifaceted identity. They move beyond the singular label of being a divorced person and engage in new roles. As volunteers, as professionals, as parents in a new capacity, and as individuals pursuing new intellectual or athletic interests. This process of expansion is crucial because it helps to decouple the sense of self-worth from the failed relationship. The goal is to move from a state of post-divorce recovery to a state of post-divorce creation. But this is fraught with challenges. The lingering stigma, though it is fading, still impacts the ease with which one can re-enter the pool of potential partners. In 2026, the marketplace for remarriage among divorced Muslims is complex. There is a distinct, often unfair, difference in the social experience of divorced men and divorced women. Historical trends indicate that while both face challenges, women often encounter a more rigorous scrutiny regarding their past, their family status, and their future intentions. This is a remnant of the patriarchal structures we discussed earlier, and it persists in the subtle ways that matchmakers and community members talk about prospective partners. The digital platforms too carry this bias. It is not uncommon to see profiles that explicitly or implicitly treat divorce as a mark of diminished value. This is a societal hurdle that remains deeply embedded in the cultural fabric, despite the progress made in legal and structural reforms. Imagine if there were a more robust system for normalizing the post-divorce experience. We are beginning to see the rise of community-based support groups specifically designed for the divorced population. These groups serve a vital function. They provide a space where the shared experience of divorce is not treated as a failing, but as a life event that requires support and empathy. By creating these spaces, the community is actively working to dismantle the stigma. They are fostering a culture where a person's value is not measured by their current marital status, but by their character, their contributions, and their resilience. This is a slow structural change, but it is one that is essential for the health of the community. We must also talk about the financial reality of this reintegration. For many, the economic impact of divorce is a long-term burden that complicates the recovery process. The loss of a dual-income household, the costs of legal proceedings, and the ongoing obligations related to child support or the division of assets can set an individual back by years. Reintegrating into the workforce, particularly for those who took a hiatus to focus on domestic life, is a formidable task. We need to see more community-led financial literacy and career mentorship programs specifically targeted at those navigating the aftermath of a marriage. Financial independence is not just a pragmatic necessity. It is a fundamental pillar of autonomy that allows for true recovery. The psychological aspect of this recovery cannot be understated. We are talking about healing from the trauma of broken promises, the grief of a lost future, and the difficulty of letting go of the habits of partnership. Therapy is becoming an increasingly normalized part of this recovery process in 2026. Access to therapists who are culturally competent, who understand the intersections of faith, family, and the unique pressures of the American Muslim experience, is a massive leap forward from where we were a generation ago. These professionals provide the tools to process the grief and to rebuild a healthy relationship with one's own sense of identity. As we look at these potential outcomes, we can see that the path to reintegration is not linear. It is a messy, deeply personal journey that looks different for everyone, but the overarching trajectory is moving toward a more compassionate, inclusive, and supportive community response. The silence is broken and the resources are growing. Yet, even with these advancements, there is a looming systemic challenge that we have not yet fully explored. It is the challenge of the intergenerational gap. We have spoken about the children and we have spoken about the parents, but we have not yet examined how the elderly members of the community, those who hold the memories of the old ways, are viewing this evolution. Their perspective is the bridge to the history we have been tracking, and their reactions to the current state of divorce are as varied and complex as the community itself. In the next part, we will explore the perspective of the elders, how they are reconciling the world they created with the world their children and grandchildren are now inhabiting. Their stories are the final, missing piece of this puzzle, and they are essential for understanding the full scope of this historical change. The perspective of the elder generation is the silent anchor in this entire narrative, yet it is often the most misunderstood. To understand the evolution of divorce in the American Muslim context, one must grapple with the worldview of those who built the first communal institutions in the 1960s and 1970s. Imagine an elder named Yusuf, who is now 82 years old and living in a suburban enclave in New Jersey in 2026. Yusuf was part of the generation that arrived with a singular focus: to establish a community that would survive the pressures of a secular, Western environment. For Yusuf and his peers, the preservation of the family was not just a personal matter. It was a foundational strategy for communal survival. They viewed divorce as a potential vulnerability that could fracture the small, fragile community they had worked so hard to build. For Yusuf, the rising rate of divorce among his grandchildren is not just a statistical change. It feels like an erosion of the very safety net that kept them protected. When he sees his granddaughter navigating a divorce with the support of a secular attorney and a digital community, his initial reaction is often one of deep concern. He remembers a time when marital disputes were mediated behind closed doors, with the primary goal being reconciliation at almost any cost. He views the modern openness and the legal focus as a shift toward individualistic, Western values that prioritize personal fulfillment over the endurance of the collective unit. This is not necessarily an act of judgment, but a reflection of the survival-oriented framework that defined his experience in America. Consider the case studies of family conflicts that arise from this generational divide. A common scenario involves a younger couple making the decision to divorce, only to face immense pressure from the grandparents to reconsider, or to hide the situation from the wider community. This creates a painful, compounding tension. The younger couple is trying to act with integrity according to their modern understanding of justice and health, while the elders are acting with integrity according to their historical understanding of communal stability. Neither party is inherently wrong. They are operating from entirely different historical realities. The failure to bridge this gap leads to unnecessary alienation. We are seeing a move toward what some sociologists call intergenerational dialogue forums, where elders and youth are encouraged to share their experiences in a structured, non-judgmental way. These forums are eye-opening. When elders like Yusuf are given the space to explain their fears, not as a way to control the youth, but as a way to share the history of their sacrifices, it changes the tone of the conversation. Conversely, when the younger generation explains the realities of their lives, the complexities of dual-career partnerships, the mental health awareness, and the need for genuine companionship, it challenges the elders to see that these are not just Western trends, but a valid response to the challenges of the modern American environment. This dialogue is essential for the future of the community because it fosters empathy rather than resentment. It helps the younger generation realize that the stigma their parents and grandparents feel is rooted in a history of struggle, and it helps the older generation realize that the new ways of navigating crisis are a sign of the community coming of age, not of it falling apart. But what about the data? The historical trends are clear. The generation that valued communal preservation above all else is being replaced by a generation that values the health and quality of the family unit itself. This is not an abandonment of faith. It is a reinterpretation of how that faith should function in a different context. We have to be careful not to paint the elder generation as a monolith. Many are incredibly supportive of the new, more transparent methods of handling marriage and divorce. They see the suffering that was hidden in the past, and they are the first to advocate for the necessity of change. We are seeing a new type of elder leadership, one that embraces the need for professionalization and integration, while maintaining a deep commitment to the spiritual and cultural core of the community. Imagine if every community center implemented a program that bridged this gap. We could see a shift where the wisdom of the elders is utilized not to enforce the status quo, but to guide the younger generation in navigating the complex emotional and spiritual terrain of their lives. This would be a move toward a more integrated, resilient community that honors its history while being bold enough to define its own future. The potential outcomes of such a shift are significant: a reduction in the social isolation of the divorced, a more supportive environment for families in crisis, and a stronger, more cohesive communal identity. This generational work is the final essential step in the maturation of the community. As we have seen through the preceding parts of this masterclass, the journey from a culture of silence to one of transparent, informed discourse is long and difficult. But the end result is a community that is more honest, more just, and more capable of handling the realities of the modern world. We have looked at the history, the law, the child development, the digital frontier, and the psychological reintegration. Now, we must synthesize everything we have learned. We have to look at the big picture. What are the concrete, actionable steps for moving forward? What does the next decade of the American Muslim family look like? In the next part, we are going to move away from the analysis and into the synthesis. We will compile a comprehensive, evidence-based roadmap for the future. We will discuss the structural changes needed at the communal level, the policy reforms needed at the institutional level, and the individual steps that families can take to build more resilient, healthy, and honest relationships from the start. We are going to look at the emerging models of marriage that are already being tested today, and we will explore how these models are setting the tone for the next generation of American Muslims. The masterclass is approaching its conclusion, but the most important part, the forward-looking strategy, is what we will cover in the penultimate session. We are no longer just looking back at the history, we are looking ahead at the architecture of the future. The architectural shift in the American Muslim family structure is already underway, and we are now moving from a period of reactive adjustment to one of proactive design. In 2026, we are witnessing the implementation of new marital models that are specifically engineered to harmonize the complexities of faith, civil law, and individual agency. Imagine a couple, Michael and Fatima, who are preparing for marriage in early 2026. They are not entering this contract with the vague assumptions that characterize the marriages of the 1990s. They are actively engaging in premarital counseling that covers not just religious compatibility, but also financial, legal, and emotional expectations. They are drafting a comprehensive marriage contract that is fully integrated with state law, ensuring that in the event of a potential dissolution, the rights of both parties are clearly protected and enforceable. This is the new gold standard. It is a transition from an implicit, tradition-based social contract to an explicit, evidence-based legal and religious agreement. By clearly articulating expectations around finances, dispute resolution, and child-rearing, couples are creating a foundation that is resilient enough to withstand the pressures of modern American life. This is the first pillar of the architecture of the future. We are seeing these models being promoted by newly established organizations that focus on proactive family health. They are moving the entire discourse away from the crisis management of divorce and toward the investment in marital health. This is a massive systemic shift in priorities. The second pillar involves the structural reform of our community institutions. As we have discussed, the mosque-based mediation models of the past are insufficient for the current reality. We are now seeing the development of centralized, professionalized arbitration centers that act as independent, impartial bodies for conflict resolution. These centers are staffed by a hybrid team of certified family law attorneys and scholars of Islamic jurisprudence. Their methodology is rooted in interest-based negotiation, focusing on finding outcomes that satisfy the requirements of religious conscience while adhering to the mandates of the civil court system. By centralizing this expertise, we are reducing the reliance on local, untrained mediators and providing a standard, consistent, and fair process for all. Consider the potential outcomes of this systemic professionalization. When the process for handling a breakdown is transparent, equitable, and legally sound, the social stigma associated with divorce is significantly mitigated. The fear that once drove individuals to remain in damaging unions is replaced by a sense of security, knowing that there is a predictable path toward resolution. This is the essential psychological shift that will enable a more healthy community. The community institutions of the future will be measured not by their ability to keep a marriage together at all costs, but by their ability to facilitate a fair, compassionate, and constructive resolution when a marriage inevitably fails. The third pillar is the integration of digital literacy into the core of community life. We have seen how the uncontrolled, digital-first environment can exacerbate polarization and conflict. The architecture of the future must include digital spaces that are moderated, evidence-based, and focused on constructive support. We need a digital infrastructure that allows for the sharing of resources, legal, financial, and psychological, without the toxic elements of anonymous gossip and judgmental commentary. This is a tall order, but it is necessary. By building these curated, professionalized digital forums, we can provide a safe space for individuals to access information and seek advice without fear. Furthermore, the reintegration of the post-divorce individual must become a central part of our communal culture. We need to normalize the life after divorce. This involves creating social, professional, and spiritual spaces that are inclusive of individuals regardless of their marital status. It requires an active effort to break the persistent biases that we have identified in the marriage marketplace. This is a matter of communal education and active advocacy. The future of the American Muslim family depends on our ability to value the individual not by their marital status, but by their overall contribution to the communal fabric. This is a deep foundational change that will require consistent, long-term advocacy. We must also continue to prioritize the developmental needs of children. The architecture of the future must have a dedicated space for child-centric support, moving away from the paradigm where the child is a casualty of the parental conflict. We need standardized, co-parenting educational programs that are specific to the unique cultural and religious pressures of this community. We need to create mentorship programs that ensure children are supported by a broader, more stable network, even when their primary family unit has undergone a transition. The future of our community rests on our ability to protect and nurture the next generation, regardless of the marital status of their parents. This roadmap is not a theory. It is a set of practices that are already being tested and refined in communities across the United States. We have the data, we have the legal frameworks, and we have the growing cadre of professionals to make this the new standard. The shift is not going to be effortless, but the direction is established. The history we have traced over these sessions is the history of a community finding its voice, recognizing its challenges, and taking the necessary steps to build a more just and sustainable future. We have come from a place of deep, protective silence to a place of open, informed, and proactive design. As we reach the final part of this masterclass, we must synthesize the most vital takeaways. We are going to look back at the historical trajectory, not just to understand where we have been, but to solidify the principles that will guide us into the next decade. We have covered the law, the psychology, the digital world, and the generational dynamics. Now we are going to articulate the core values that will underpin the architecture of the future. We are building a vision for a community that is not defined by its crises, but by its capacity for growth, justice, and resilience. This is the concluding synthesis, and it is the foundation upon which the next century of the American Muslim experience will be built. We have arrived at the final synthesis of our 10-part masterclass. Over the last several episodes, we have traced the arc of the American Muslim experience from the shadows of silence and communal survivalism to the current era of proactive, informed, and systemic reform. We have analyzed the friction between civil law and religious covenant, explored the psychological and developmental impact on children, dissected the digital frontier that is both enabling and polarizing our community, and confronted the generational tensions that define our internal debates. Today, we must solidify the principles that will guide us into the next decade of 2026 and beyond. This is not just a summary of what we have discussed. It is the articulation of a new, resilient identity for the American Muslim family. The first core principle is the necessity of radical transparency. We must move away from the idea that the internal dynamics of a marriage, or the breakdown of one, should be hidden to protect communal honor. Historical trends consistently show that secrecy is the primary enabler of injustice. When we choose transparency, we allow for informed decision-making. We empower individuals to understand their rights. We invite the necessary expertise of legal and religious professionals. And we create a culture where the truth is considered a fundamental component of justice. Transparency is the antidote to the fear that has historically crippled our community's ability to handle conflict. The second principle is the intentional integration of systems. We must reject the false dichotomy that forces an individual to choose between their religious identity and their civil rights as a U.S. citizen. The architecture of the future is one where the Islamic marriage contract is not a separate, potentially unenforceable document, but a core component of a comprehensive legal strategy. This means that when a couple enters into a marriage, they are doing so with an eyes-wide-open understanding of the civil and religious requirements. It means that when a dispute arises, they are not left to navigate a confusing, disjointed process, but have access to integrated, professional mediation that respects both their faith and the law of the land. The third principle is the cultivation of communal empathy. specifically regarding the post-divorce experience. We must move beyond the rhetoric of stigma and embrace a culture of support. If we are to be a community that claims to prioritize the well-being of its members, we must actively work to remove the barriers that prevent the divorced from fully participating in communal life. This requires a systemic commitment to creating inclusive spaces, fostering professional and spiritual support networks, and challenging the subtle biases that persist in our social and matrimonial structures. We have to understand that the health of the community is measured by the health of its most vulnerable members, not by the maintenance of an idealized external image. Consider the case study of a model community organization in Virginia that has, over the past 5 years, implemented this three-pillar approach. By offering transparent premarital workshops, providing integrated legal and religious arbitration, and facilitating inclusive post-divorce support groups, they have seen a marked reduction in the high conflict, prolonged legal battles that once characterized their community. They have built a culture where the focus is not on preventing divorce at any cost, but on fostering marriage through health, justice, and clarity. This is the potential outcome of systemic commitment. It is not an idealistic dream. It is an achievable, pragmatic reality. We have to recognize that the evolution we are witnessing is not a temporary adjustment. It is a permanent transformation. The American Muslim community is maturing. It is moving from a state of being defined by its status as an immigrant or minority group, struggling to maintain its boundaries, to a state of being defined by its capacity to contribute to the broader American dialogue on faith, justice, and family life. This is the defining challenge of our time. We are not just adapting to America. We are shaping what it means to be a Muslim in this society. As we look toward the future, we must commit to the ongoing education and development of the next generation. We have to ensure that they are equipped with the digital literacy, the legal knowledge, and the emotional intelligence to navigate the complexities of life in a way that is true to their faith and their identity as citizens. This is the responsibility of every parent, every community leader, and every individual who considers themselves part of this community. We are building the architecture that they will inhabit. This masterclass has been an attempt to provide a map for this journey. We have looked at the history, the law, the trauma, the technology, and the generational dynamics. We have explored the dark corners of our internal conflicts and the bright spots of our communal progress. We have identified the barriers to progress and the paths toward resolution. The final essential takeaway is this: the strength of our community is not found in the perfection of our institutions, but in our willingness to confront our shortcomings, to learn from our history, and to engage in the hard, necessary work of building a more just and compassionate future. We are, by all accounts, just getting started. The blueprint is laid out, the resources are growing, and the conversation is open. The path forward is ours to walk, with the lessons of the past as our guide, and the potential for a better future as our goal. The journey of the American Muslim family is one of the most compelling stories of our time, and it is a story that we are all, in our own way, continuing to write.